Hello there. Despite how I sound to most people, I am actually a 10 plus year veteran of Destiny, dating all the way back to the original Destiny 1 beta. So I thought, hey, why the hell not? I'm bored. I thought, why not tier list every single content update, expansion, free update, season. Played through all of them, and yeah, why the hell not? A few rules I follow for my tier list. It's just how I rank things. Number one, price isn't the biggest factor, mainly because when it comes to Destiny, for most hardcores like myself, you're either in or you're out. You're gonna buy everything because you want to experience all the content. It's just how it is. I care more about how good a content drop is as opposed to how much it's priced, so long as it's not outrageously priced. And I think there's only really one thing on this list that I would class as outrageously priced for what we got. My second sort of rule when I tier list parameter, whatever you want to call it, is I judge all of the content that came out during that time frame. For example, for Rise of Iron, I judge things such as the Dawning that came out during that time frame. For things like Season 22, Season of the Witch, I judge Crota's End in like the same bow. I judge King's Fall with Season 18. Even though all those content updates were free, I think it makes sense to put them all together. So then, Destiny 1 base launch. Yeah, I'm going to be real, I put it here. A lot of people have a lot of fond memories of this game, but Vault of Glass were incredibly good at the time. It has not aged well. The planets had pretty much nothing to do on them. The story was an absolute mess. The only reason it's not down here is A, it started the whole franchise, and B, it continued to contain solid elements such as the gunplay, the world building, and it was just the first game of its type, and despite killers such as Anthem coming out, they've all fell short because none of them have really been able to capture the magic that the original Destiny 1 created and to an extent still exists to this day, which is why I put it in C tier instead of lower down. Next, Dark Below. Yeah, I'm going to be real, this is a straight F tier. Three story missions that were all not really that good. Crota's End was an absolute joke when it came out, being able to be soloed. You had everyone such as Datto memeing on it. It was just not that good. But the main reason I put it in an F tier as opposed to a D tier is this is the only content drop on this entire list, with the exception of, well, one big thing that actually did harm to the game. To those of you who played it, you would remember the RNG you had with Xur when it came to upgrading your exotics, combined with the new currency you had to earn from Crota's End to get to max level. It was just an abysmal time, and the content update was not worth the, what's the opposite? The opposite to quality of life updates, whatever you want to call it. It was a big downgrade and actually hurt the game in a lot of ways, all for a vendor refresh, free story missions, and a lackluster raid. Next, however, we actually get into something good. House of Wolves, the DLC that honestly kind of saved the game. Yes, there were band-aid fixes such as the ability to level all your gear to 365, old or new, but we had an actual solid campaign. We had a new social space, the Vestian Outpost, which to this day I think is one of the coolest spots we've been. We had Prison of Elders, which, while I don't think it's aged particularly well at the time, it was incredible. I loved Skolos as a final boss. And then we had Trials. There's a reason Trials carries on Twitch, kept this game alive until the next update. It was incredibly good armor, incredible soundtrack, and the lore was great as well. So I think it deserves an A tier, especially for only £16. This was definitely worth it. I mean, come on, everyone knows this is going here. This kind of put the game on life support. This is what saved it. The Dreadnought was incredible story. The three new subclasses were all incredibly fun to play with. The amount of secrets on the Dreadnought, one of the best raids in the franchise to this day. And we actually had a bit of coherency with this expansion, given how it led on from Dark Below. Something a lot of the content drops in Destiny 1 lacked was they all kind of felt like individual stories, kind of like their own different filler arcs in an anime. There was no real cohesion, but it was nice for something to link from Dark Below to something bigger. April update. Yeah. hasn't aged particularly well. I'm not a big fan of them adding loot boxes. I think the only game that ever did loot boxes well was Overwatch. Rest in peace, Overwatch 1. The armor was cool, but one new story mission, one new strike, one reprise strike. It was alright for the time, especially because it was free, but like I said, I'm not judging price. And for this to be the only real big content drop we got until Rise of Iron, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Speaking of Rise of Iron, put it here. Some people may think that's outrageous putting this below House of Wolves. However, the new destination was literally just a massive circle. The story missions were kind of lame. The first and last one were cool, but the second, third, and fourth were kind of busy work. Archon's Forge was just a worse Court of Oryx. And, you know what? No, actually, I'll put it up here. The raid was very solid. I think that's like the best armor in the franchise. It definitely had lows, and I'm still going to put it below House of Wolves because I think this literally put the game on life support again to pave the way for the Taken King. But, yeah, no, I'm happy with it there. It had very high highs for Rise of Iron. Now, my biggest hot take among a lot of people who play Destiny, I actually think this update was mid. Age of Triumph. Yes, it was better than April update, and yes, it had some of the best armor we've ever had in the franchise, but that didn't really matter, because since it was the last update, you were earning the armor for kind of no reason. The actual content, there was pretty much no new content. It was all reprised, with the exception of the Templar, Ear-Ute, Crota, and Atheon challenge modes. And out of all four of those, Ear-Ute was the only one that was actually interesting. The others were just don't pick up the sword, only shoot one oracle, and don't teleport, which were very boring. And if you were someone like me who didn't raid back then, all you got was a class item, which was an advertisement for an Eververse armor set, and then a book that just gave emblems. This update, I think, is held in very high regard, especially among the higher ups in the community. But I just think it's nostalgia, to be honest. Moving on. Curse of Osiris, I'm actually going to put this above Destiny 2 launch because a lot of people hold this very low in the F tier. I don't think anything Curse of Osiris released was inherently bad. Like, it wasn't great, don't get me wrong, but I think people kind of view this expansion as a symbol of Destiny's honeymoon period ending, Destiny 2's honeymoon period ending, and that's why I hold in such a hated regard. However, the world quest with Saint 14 was very good. The first kind of iteration of crafting, it wasn't called crafting back then, but the prophecies I thought was quite cool. Mercury based off how small it was, people hated it. However, I thought it was still a cool looking destination. I thought the strikes were solid. It was a better final boss than Ghoul Panoptes was. It was bad, don't get me wrong, but I actually think it did a lot of things better than Destiny 2 launch, which was just a complete downgrade from Rise of Iron. Yeah, I'll put that in A tier. I love the addition of exotic catalysts. Escalation protocol was incredible. The armor and weapons were good. Spire of Stars I thought was exceptional, even though it's the only Destiny 2 raid I actually haven't played. It's held in very high regard. I also forgot to mention Code of Osiris in D tier because what was his name? The Eater of Worlds final boss, Argos, was, in my opinion, a very good boss. But Warmind, the only real bad thing Warmind did was kill a worm god in a 4 mission campaign, which is pretty lame. It didn't really do much justice. Yes, he was weakened because he was in the ice for years. Wasn't really satisfying, but that it's literally history repeating itself. We're going from House of Wolves to Taken King to Warmind putting Destiny 2 on life support for Forsaken. You don't really need to say many words about Forsaken. It was literally what Taken King wants to Destiny 1 or for Destiny 2, but better. We had 2 destinations, we had a better raid, we had a dungeon which took the community by storm, we had 9 new supers as opposed to 3 new subclasses. I actually think Taken King did that better than Forsaken, but hey, 9 new supers. Very good, especially one of Radiance. I don't really have much to say on Forsaken that it doesn't say for itself. It was incredible. My only real gripe with Forsaken is Cade should not have been killed off in promotional material. It should have been a complete secret until we play the first campaign. No one was buying Destiny back then for the story content. It was not what it is today. And even then today, debate about whether it's good or not. But other than that, yeah, Forsaken was the #1 DLC for a very long time. Black Armory, Season of the Forge. I remember a lot of people had a mid-reception to this, especially when day one was not so great. But yeah, I put it above all of these. The weapons were incredible. Nairobi Labs was incredible. Scourge of the Past, we actually got a raid with it, and Scourge of the Past was incredible. I think I actually prefer Scourge to the 2 raids from these 2 content drops, despite it being shorter. It just was a lot of good loot. But I don't really have much else to say on Black Armory, and also Secrets. Secrets are always going to do well in the Destiny community, and Nairobi Labs was a good secret. Another reason why Rise of Iron is actually deserving of A tier is the Outbreak Prime quest, also the Thorn quest, which is kind of cool. Drifter. A lot of people put this in F tier. Reckoning was pretty bad. Yeah. No, I'll put it here. I like the quest that Zer gave, the Tales, what they called, I think they were called Tales of the Nine, maybe they weren't called Gift of the Nine, whatever they were called. The lore from them was very cool, the armor sets for Gambit Prime was cool, despite Invader being busted. But other than that, yeah. Opulence is an S tier. Crown of Sorrow was a very good raid. We had the Tribute Hall, rest in peace. We had the first sort of focusing of weapons, and we had a lot of good weapons from the Menagerie. Speaking of Menagerie, what a fantastic activity. There's a reason it was set the backbone for the Sundial and the Season 8 activity. It was just incredible. There's not really much else to say on Opulence. I miss it, man. I miss it. Crown of Sorrow was a good raid. The only real bad thing about this is the Crown of Sorrow weapons sucked, apart from Taraba, and even then it's probably one of the worst raid weapons if you're not a PvP player. But a raid, an incredible activity, an exotic mission, the Tribute Hall, there wasn't really much else you could want. Although they did change the engrams you got when leveling up to be old items, which was kind of lame. But apart from that, pretty good. Well, I actually think Shadowkeep isn't as bad as people make out. Yes, was it overpriced at £30? Probably, especially because it was more expensive than Rise of Iron. That's $35, by the way, for anyone who's American. But it came with a lot of good free updates. The artifact was something people were asking for ages, and to this day I'm not a big fan of the XP aspect, but the mod aspect I think is very good. Finishers I thought were cool. Yes, they were just a monetization I can't speak, monetization tool, but they were still very good. Champions, hot take, I think champions were very good at the time, combined with Nightfall difficulties. Nightfalls were a complete joke in Forsaken. The biggest complaint of Forsaken is this was the easiest the game has ever been, with auto reload, debuff stacking, no hard mode on raids or Nightfalls. And Shadowkeep at least fixed this for Nightfalls, and then we also had Armor 3.0, which I think a lot of people take for granted nowadays. It is incredible for build crafting, even the earlier versions, although the element part of it was a bit lame. The Moon, I am biased. I think the Moon is a pretty solid destination, especially in the new areas. We had the Xenophage Exotic Quest, which is cool. It's a shame the dungeon came out a month later, so it was power crept to hell, but it was still a solid dungeon. And I like Garden of Salvation. I think it is a solid raid. I think it's a good star raid as well. I like how they did something different with Garden, because a lot of the raids, even to this day, are one player has information, must convey information to another player that they cannot see. Garden didn't really do that much. The tether mechanic was very unique and was not as buggy as people said it was. Yeah, I think Shadowkeep deserves to be here. I don't think it's as bad as people say it was. I think most arguments for it is it being overpriced, which is valid, but like I said, I'm not doing that for this tier list. Yeah, this was terrible, but it launched with Shadowkeep, so no one really cared, but yeah, this sucked. Like, Leviathan's Breath quest was lame, the mission was lame, not even mission, the seasonal activity was lame. Whatever, not really need to say much about it. Dawn. I'll put Dawn in A tier. The Sundale, I think, was a worse Menagerie, but it wasn't bad. Like, being a worse Menagerie isn't terrible, given how good Menagerie was. The Saint 14 quest line I thought was very cool. The two-part quest. The weapons were cool. And the part at the end to bring back Trials, the whole event that led into the cutscene, I thought was pretty neat. And then we also had the what's it called? The Corridors of Time puzzle. I think it's very lame that people didn't have to do that to get Bastion. The quest was just given to people afterwards. But the puzzle was a good community puzzle. It brought everyone together. It was cool nonetheless. I think this deserves to be A tier. uh, Literally bounty this season. Yeah, shush. Arrivals. I'm actually not as big of a fan of Arrivals as people said. It was kind of just a public event. Like, it looked cool. The two exotic quests, Ruinous Effigy and Traveler's Chosen, were just busy work. I feel like I have to put it here because it had a dungeon. I think Prophecy carries it. Yeah. Yeah, I'll go that. Beyond Light. I'll be honest, I made this B plus tier solely from this. I wasn't originally going to put Shadowkeep here, but I changed my mind. Beyond Light, I think, is on its own, an A tier, arguably S tier expansion. I think Europa is an incredible destination. I think Stasis, I'm mainly a PvE player for context. I think Stasis was incredibly fun and unique. First time we ever got a new element. I think the story was actually solid. I hold the opinion that if Eramis had given some time to adapt before the DLC, not adapt, what's the right word? Fleshed out. If she had been fleshed out more before the DLC, I think she could have been on par with Savathun as a good villain. The raid, Deepstone Crypt, there's a reason we have a dungeon and an exotic mission based off Deepstone Crypt now. It was incredible. The reason why this is not A tier is because, like I said, I'm judging the updates that came with the expansions, and the DC fee ruined this content update. One of the biggest complaints of this update was Beyond Light didn't have many weapons, but it actually had a decent amount of weapons. I think 17 at launch. No, more than that. No, I think I had about 17 roughly at launch, which was not bad for a content update at the time. It was just that we had lost 3 years worth of content. I think if this had come out without the DC fee, I think there's a very good argument for it being A tier, especially lore. And similar to how Rise of Iron would probably be number one for fashion, this would probably be the number one expansion for lore, even surpassing the later ones. Sad, man, the DC fee ruined this. This should be here, in my opinion, but hey. Shall I put this here? The content was mostly terrible with this. The Crow storyline was cool, but we barely saw it. The activity was terrible with the Wrathborn. The only reason I'm not putting this in F tier, Season of the Hunt, is because the Hawkmoon mission and the quest beforehand I thought were very good. I think that saves this from being an F tier. Chosen is defo an A tier. The Battlegrounds, I think they've kind of overstayed their welcome now, but at the time, I thought they were very cool. We got a strike in a season, the first time we've ever gotten that, and I think that's very cool. Presage, one of the best missions we've ever gotten, was arguably number one before Dual Destiny. I thought it was incredible. The story, this was kind of marked a history. What's the word? What's the word? A shift in Destiny where Cena became much more story driven, and I thought that was incredibly good, especially because it actually meant we could get invested with the characters, and people who weren't so into the lore could actually start to see these characters go through character development and actually connect with them. I think this is why Crow is one of the favourite characters now, even though some people think he's a bit gloomy, which, fair enough. But there's a reason he has probably the best arc in the entire franchise, and it all started here, because he started actually getting good character development. Sorry, that was a bit of a ramble. 14. I'm going to change the order of these things a bit. 14, I think, even though I'm not putting it with opulence, I think it is my favourite season. I'm biased because I love Mithrax, but it came with Vault of Glass, which was revamped. It's not my favourite raid ever, but it's a raid, and I think it has a very good final boss still. I thought the Activity Override, I think it was called, was pretty solid. I think Um, the missions we got once per week were cool. I think beating Quarrier, I think Quarrier was a very good boss fight. And I like the political views of Lakshmi and Osiris and Mithrax all kind of colliding with each other. I thought it was very interesting dynamic, and it also helped with the character development for Osiris, well, who we thought was Osiris at the time, which led us into 15. Oops. Season 15. I didn't think it was as good as Chosen or Splicer. I thought the activities were kind of meh. I thought the Egg Scepter's quest was kind of meh. I thought it was dragged out a bit too long. But it was the first time speaking with Savathun, which I thought was very cool. Again, the character development with Crow and getting his Aldrin memories back, I thought was cool. Petra was there, which was my favourite. Just think... She's one of my favourite characters, so that's what I meant by that. I just think... I don't know, I just think that this didn't really have anything outstanding about it, where Splicer's theming and political views and Chosen's presage and changes to the way Bungie told stories. This season didn't really have much like that. It did come with cross-play and cross-save, which was very good. But Season 14 also came with Transmog. Yeah, I'm happy with this in B. I'm going to put it there, though. I don't think it's better than Beyond Light. I'll put it there. 30th anniversary. I'm not going to judge it based off pricing, but I think I should say definitely overpriced for what we got. We basically paid £22 for just cosmetics and a dungeon, which, as good as Grasp was, not worth that much. However, I'm going to judge everything and not judge price. I think this has to go. I think it has to go here. Days of Eternity is a very good activity. I think it was the best Menagerie-like activity since Menagerie. And the... what's it called? The dungeon was incredible. I love the armor set from the dungeon. Galahorn coming back, yes, nostalgia based, but still very cool. IS Luna coming back, Thousand Yard Stare, Matador. Still don't have a God Roll Matador. But, and I'm, as a veteran, I liked the reference to the Loot Cave. I thought it was pretty cool. Not as good as these two, but Witch Queen was incredible. The best campaign we've ever had to this day. I think it was better than Final Shape still. Maybe I'm biased because Cypher's one of my favourite characters as well. And the raid is one of my favourite raids ever. Incredible armour, weapons that are still valid meta options to this day. Rolk, which was a boss that actually fought back. My only real problem is, as cool as the Throne World was, there wasn't much to do on it. And the post-raid content, unlike Beyond Light, which had the Lament quest, this didn't really have much. I think the campaign and the raid defo hard carried this DLC, but both of those were some of the highest highs at the time in the franchise's history, especially for campaigns. I think that it deserves S tier for that alone. This was Risen. I'll put that in C. Yeah, Battlegrounds, like I said, we had them before. I didn't think they were bad. I didn't think they were incredible. The story kind of just felt like padding and filler. The only real thing that was cool about it was Crow killing the Scion, leading to Lord Saladin joining Kaito's council. But that has not done anything in the story since then. That kind of just felt like a way to write out Saladin. And the exotic mission back on Mars for the grenade launcher, what was it called? Dead Messenger, was meh. Yeah, it was just meh. Haunted. I'm a big fan of Haunted. It's not as good as these, but I'm a big fan of Haunted. Solar 3.0. Incredible. I loved going back to Leviathan. Even though it was reused and it was also a public event style seasonal activity, which are my favourite. I think it was the best of the three of them. I like the story, although it did come a bit predictable with the 2-week cycle with each of the three main characters, Kaito, Aldrin, Crow, and Zavala. It's set up Lightfall as well with Callus. It had very cool weapons, at least from aesthetic. They weren't necessarily the best weapons, but they aesthetically look cool. This is the example of a season that it didn't really do anything wrong, but it also didn't really have anything outstanding either about it. This is literally the definition of mid. Ooh, the pirate season. Season 18. Yeah, hot take, I'm going to put it in B. A lot of people really don't like this season, but it came with King's Fall, which was incredible. I thought the theming was very cool. Again, I'm biased because I really like Mithrax. I liked Catch Crash. The other activities were a bit meh. I liked, again, the political and the Elixir and the Origins we got up with Ido, Mithrax, and Eramis. And I don't think the teacup scene was as bad as people say it was. I didn't really. Should I use a teacup? Should I use a needle? I don't really care. The whole point was to bring Osiris back. And while I think they ruined a lot of it in Lightfall, I do like the kind of mystery this DLC gave, not DLC, this season gave surrounding Nezarec. Seraph. Yeah, Seraph is A tier. Uh, Yeah, I'll put it here. Surface A tier. The exotic mission for Revision Zero was good. I'm glad we got the Exo Stranger back after Beyond Light. It was the first time we saw her since then. We got. We had one of the best cutscenes we've ever had leading into Lightfall. The armor was cool. I like the Warmind aesthetic. Yeah, it was just a great segue into Lightfall, and then this came out and it was terrible. Actually, you know what? Is it a D? No, I'm actually going to put it in C. I'll put it in C. I think Strand was very cool. I like the changes they did to armor mods. Loadouts were incredible. I thought Neomuna was a very cool destination. I think the raid, the encounters were the only bad thing about the raid. I think loot-wise, aesthetic-wise, lore-wise, it was all incredible. But yeah, the raid encounters were not good. A 2-hour day 1 raid, incredibly lame. This is the only day 1 or day 2 technically raid emblem I have, and yet I still don't really like it. I don't even use it. And the campaign was just terrible, story-wise. Gameplay-wise, it was good, but terrible story-wise. So this is not the one. This was such a disappointment. It felt like they were trying to capitalize off the whole Neo sort of aesthetic that was pretty popular back in 2023. Like cyberpunk thing. Did the anime come out that year? Maybe Cyberpunk's anime came out that year, I'm not sure. But either way, yeah, it just wasn't great. Strand was cool though. Strand saves it from being a D tier. Defiance, Season of Defiance. I've really got nothing to say about this. Again, the battlegrounds were even worse than Risen's battlegrounds. Vescalibur was cool, but it was a terrible solo experience. But yeah, that exotic mission was cool. What even was the story of this season? Amanda's death. I'm glad that they finally killed off a character, but it didn't really feel like she should have died. Like, it felt like she could have escaped. They needed to do her death in a better way. But I like that she actually died. Then, Deep. I actually think Deep is a very good season. Deep Dive was a very cool activity. We hear Zevura's voice for the first time. The whole underground water thing I thought was incredible. I loved the dungeon. Ghost of the Deep I thought was incredible. I think it is, to this day, one of the best dungeons ever. I think it's personally my favourite dungeon. The water section, I think people cry about too much. I think they were fine. Very cool solo flawless. The Taken Kin armor was incredible. Anything else about this? Deep Dive already mentioned. It kind of felt like the first real roguelike activity. And yeah, Deep was cool. Witch was also cool. I put it below Deep because Witch again felt like a better version of Haunted because its story was better. It felt like it did a lot of things really well, but there was nothing really outstanding. But we had Altar of Summoning, a better version of Core of Oryx. We had Seraphim's Spire, which was kind of like a mini strike with 3 unique bosses. I thought it was cool. I'm actually a big fan of the card system we got. I'm a big fan of Crota's End, the new one. I think it is one of the best raids in the game, the D2 revamped version. The Imbaru engine, again, secrets are always going to go down well, and this had a very good secret. It was literally just a Jack of all trades, master of none season. Wish. Does it deserve to be that high? Yeah, I think it does. What was the activity called? Queens? No, it wasn't called Queens. Well, the main activity, I can't remember its name. The main activity for the season was incredible, a real good roguelike activity with the upgrades and the 4 different waves, and very rewarding. I heard some people complain about the car coming back after Forsaken in the final kind of season before final shape felt kind of weird. I get that, but it made a lot of sense. The final cutscene with Cade was incredible. The dungeon, of course, Warlord's Ruin. Incredible dungeon. The armor was very cool. We got a rocket sidearm, buried bloodline, the quest to get buried bloodline's catalyst, the lore surrounding this dungeon. I feel like I'm just repeating myself over and over again, but yeah, wish, wish was very good. Into the Light. This is Eta. No, no, no. What would I put it? But I think House of Wolves is too high. I'll put it there. Yeah, we've been asking for an activity like Onslaught for ages, a real horde mode. I think they delivered fairly well with it. I wish the upgrades were a bit more interesting, but I wish there was like a COD Zombies like Easter egg somewhere in there, but maybe I'm asking for a bit too much. But the armor was very cool. The old weapons coming back, I actually really liked. I loved the shinies. We had 2 exotic missions come back. Actually, thinking of that, I'm going to be drifted up here purely because of the Outbreak mission. In hindsight, yeah, Into the Light was just a very good segue into the final shape with a very good activity, a very cool armor set, exotic missions coming back. Yeah, it actually was the first time since Witch Queen where loot was actually something people cared about. Almost done. Final shape. Do I? Yeah, I'm going to put it above Forsaken. The raid, I think it is the best raid we've ever had. I think Verity is the best raid encounter we've ever had. I think it was an incredible story. I think it was only beaten out by Witch Queens, but I still loved it. A 12-man activity. The best mission we've ever had in the form of Dual Destiny. Prismatic, which I'm not the biggest fan of Prismatic because I think it's kind of going to make the other subclasses slowly obsolete. It's already happening, and with sort of Solar Titan has lost a lot of its Flare. Void Warlock is kind of not really any point in using it anymore unless you're doing the Skull of Darham Kara Bad Juju build, which does have some merit to that. But overall, Final Shape was just an absolute banner. I can't pronounce G's. But Bungie finally got their big W with this, an actual solid send-off. And it kind of reminds me of how much irreparable damage Lightfall did. If Lightfall hadn't, because the fact that this sold less than Lightfall is abysmal. Honestly, abysmal. But, hey, Final Shape, best content drop we've ever gotten. Incredible send-off. Echoes. I'm actually going to put this in B. A lot of people would put this lower, and I'm torn on the ending. Yes, it did feel very unsatisfying, especially since we were kind of weakened by an enemy when we had just killed the Witness, a lone enemy. But I'm glad we didn't kill her off because for the longest time the Vex has been my least favourite enemy faction because it is a hive mind, so there's no real antagonist, and we got a Vex antagonist in this. I think killing her off too early would have been a bit lame. I also like that it carried on the lore from Lightfall. Lightfall did have good lore despite all its faults. It fixed a plot hole in Season 9 regarding Satan 14 and how he kind of took this current timeline's version's place of him. It fixed that plot point. Battlegrounds was very cool. These were actually felt like good battlegrounds, a real upgrade since Chosen. The other activities I thought were kind of meh, but the battlegrounds were cool. My only real disappointment with this was, what was it? My only real disappointment with this was that Nessus didn't really change, like, in the patrol space. And I get that's probably really difficult from a developer point of view. But I think if it had actually changed, I think it would have come off as a lot better, because it kind of creates a disconnect, especially when we have to go do quests in the world on Nessus in just patrol, and it doesn't look any different, despite the fact that we're constantly telling us that the planet is changing. Don't tell us, show us failsafe. But I don't think Echoes is as bad as people say. Revenant is not finished yet. Can't judge it. I think it's here though, based off what we've seen. I love the thematic theme of it, but the main 2 activities we've been shown the new Prison of Elders revamp, and we've played what I've played. um, the new Onslaught, as cool as they are / look, they're just old activities rehashed. But thematically, I think it is a very cool episode / season. I think it has potential to come here if the story ends on a good note and the exotic mission is good. Is there anything I would change? Is there anything I forgot to mention? Seraph also had Spire of the Watcher, which is another reason why I think it deserves A. This had duality. It might deserve A due to duality. Nah, Nah, I'm gonna leave it here. If it had an exotic mission like season 19, I'd probably put it in A, but it didn't. Is there anything I'm missing here? Anything I forgot to mention? Revenant did have Vesper. No, I'll put it in A. I'll put it in A purely because of Vesper's Host. Vesper's Host is an incredible dungeon. I think I've said incredible way too much this video. But, yeah, it slapped. It is a very hard solo flawless, but it is a very cool thematic dungeon, an actual intense final boss fight. One of the most intense final boss fights in the game. I'd argue it's more intense than The Witness. And yeah, it's just an incredible dungeon, and I like the fact that all the encounters build on each other. We get Scanner and Operator, then we get the numbered panels, then we use the nukes with all three of those, combine that with Suppressor and the Lightning. It all comes together in the final encounter, every mechanic. And I feel like dungeons like Pit of Heresy didn't really do that. The symbols didn't really have a part to play in the final encounter of Pit, and I like that for Vespers. Right, I think I'm done. That is my Destiny 10-year plus veterans content tier list. I think a lot of people will have a problem with the fact I've put so many things in A tier, but I genuinely think the franchise had very, very high highs. It has had a lot of low lows as well. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 12, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So 23 in the higher end, 16 in the lower end, and then the final 3 down here. I think I did the math right on that. I don't know. Yeah. That's my Destiny 2 tier list from a 10 plus year veteran. Thanks for watching.